Every year, thousands of people disappear in U.S. national parks. Most are found, but a distinct subset vanishes without a trace, leaving behind no footprints and no physical evidence. These disappearances happen with terrifying speed. Experienced hikers and young children have vanished in seconds, often while just a few feet away from their companions. This comparison illustrates the missing 411 profile. Unlike a standard lost hiker who leaves a debris trail, these victims leave no scent, no tracks, and are rarely located through conventional search methods. Because these cases lack the physical markers that search teams rely on, they represent a phenomenon that defies typical wilderness logic. The data reveals that these events are not random. They occur in identical, repeated patterns, localized to specific geographic clusters. These hotspots include Yosemite, Rocky Mountain, Great Smoky Mountains, Crater Lake, and Glacier National Park. Even with advanced technology, search efforts often fail. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging consistently scan these zones without detecting any biological signatures from the missing. Standard ground tracking provides no further clarity. Highly trained search dogs frequently stop tracking at a specific point because the physical scent trail has simply ceased to exist. The simultaneous failure of both aerial sensors and biological tracking indicates that in these specific cases, the natural environment retains absolutely no continuous physical evidence of the victim's passage. This pattern is best understood through individual cases, such as a young boy who vanished mere feet from his family in a matter of seconds. The initial response was massive. Hundreds of volunteers searched the immediate forests, rivers, and cliffs, yet found no sign of the child. Days later, the boy was found miles away. Reaching this point required traversing rugged terrain and severe elevation changes experts concluded were physically impossible for him alone. Furthermore, many victims are located in areas already thoroughly cleared multiple times during initial searches. These outcomes prove that search teams cannot rely on standard time-distance math or perimeter logic when investigating missing 411 cases. For the rare victims who are found alive, the mystery only deepens. Survivors often report severe cognitive and temporal distortions. Their accounts include missing memories, days that seem to vanish in an instant, and confusion regarding their location or surroundings. Because these cases involve vanishing trails, impossible travel distances, and temporal anomalies, standard search and rescue models are insufficient for these specific wilderness hotspots. North America's wilderness is vast and unforgiving. Millions of square miles of dense forest and steep elevation stretch across the continent, indifferent to human life. Locating a missing person in this terrain is an exercise in rigorous mathematics. Modern search and rescue is a highly calculated discipline designed to narrow down thousands of acres into manageable sectors. Operations use rigid grids, analyzing topography to predict human movement based on the path of least resistance. Models factor in biology, plotting the maximum distance a person can cover based on age, speed, and the toll of rough terrain. On the ground, trained rangers execute these formulas, moving systematically across terrain, clearing zones inch by inch, effectively crossing sections off the map until they box the missing person in. This structured approach turns the search into a high-probability operation, allowing teams to clear vast sections of land with a high degree of confidence. But then there are the cases where the math breaks. Investigators routinely describe finding victims in the middle of zones that have already been aggressively cleared by ground teams and canine units. The geography of these discoveries is often physically implausible. Toddlers and elderly adults with minimal physical endurance are found on extreme mountain peaks or deep inside treacherous terrain that experienced hikers startle to navigate. The ground rarely offers clues. Search dogs lose the scent almost immediately, and investigators consistently fail to find tracks or broken brush to explain how a victim reached such an isolated location on their own. These discoveries present a structural problem for search teams. Because the location of the victim contradicts their known physical capabilities, investigators are left with a set of facts that current search logic simply cannot reconcile. The confusion only deepens when survivors actually speak. When missing children are recovered alive, they frequently return with accounts that sound like they belong in folklore. A specific pattern of bizarre stories repeats across different decades and state lines. Kids report sleeping in unfamiliar locations, hearing voices echoing from the trees, or fed by an unknown woman. In one notable case, a young boy vanished into the woods overnight. When he was finally recovered, he casually explained to searchers that he had been kept warm and protected until morning by a bear-like creature. These accounts parallel reports recorded by adults in the hours surrounding a disappearance. Hikers frequently document seeing glowing lights moving through the canopy or catching glimpses of shadowy figures pacing just beyond the reach of their flashlights. Investigators are left in a difficult position with this data. The stories are impossible to verify through traditional forensic means, but the consistency of these reports across decades makes them difficult to ignore. Environmental patterns often show a distinct correlation with the timing of these disappearances. Records show that severe weather events frequently begin immediately after a person vanishes. Sudden storms, unexpected snow, or dense fogs roll in with suspicious timing, often during the first few hours of the disappearance. These localized events act as a barrier to rescue efforts. They force helicopters to stay grounded and disrupt scent trails, effectively blinding search teams during the window of time when a victim is most likely to be found. In these cases, the landscape itself functions as an antagonist, concealing evidence and protecting the mystery of the person's trajectory. A specific geological pattern connects hundreds of these disparate cases: the presence of massive granite formations. This chart plots the coordinates of these unusual disappearances. They map onto North America's largest granite formations, with high statistical significance. Some researchers hypothesize these deposits generate magnetic anomalies that disrupt human navigation or even alter a person's perception. While no scientific consensus exists to explain why, this undeniable geological clustering proves the disappearances are not random events, but are linked to the Earth itself. The lack of official answers has created a vacuum, leading to an explosion of public speculation and conflicting theories. Public opinion generally splits between those who suspect undiscovered natural predators or criminal activity and those who believe the cause is supernatural in nature. Yet the raw data remains unchanged: victims found beyond physical limits, impossible survivor stories, and links to geological hotspots. The volume of these anomalies suggests that even with our advanced sensors and GPS, the wilderness harbors events that remain outside our ability to explain. America's national parks protect millions of acres of the most beautiful terrain on Earth. Every year, millions of us pack our gear and hike into these sprawling green canopies, looking for a weekend of recreation and peace. That familiar sense of security is easily shattered. Thousands of people have walked into these designated recreation areas and simply vanished, leaving no footprints, no gear, and absolutely no physical trace they were ever there. The wilderness answers entirely to its own rules. A bright afternoon hike turns dangerous in minutes. A sudden drop in temperature or a fast-moving fog bank will rapidly swallow a visible trail, turning a mapped route into a hostile trap. This distinct pattern of people disappearing under highly anomalous, physically improbable conditions has been categorized by investigators under the title Missing 411. The true terror lies in our sheer inability to find a logical explanation. We are left looking at empty trails, forced to question how much we actually understand about the wild. To figure out what is happening to these people, investigators have to start with the most statistically likely suspect: nature itself. The physical terrain is brutal. High-altitude environments feature jagged peaks, hidden crevices, and steep drop-offs that routinely cause fatal accidents, trapping even experienced outdoor survivalists. Then there is the intense psychological toll of being lost. A hiker steps off the trail, loses their bearings, and severe panic sets in. That adrenaline response rapidly clouds judgment, frequently driving disoriented individuals deeper into the woods and further from marked safety. Exposure, sudden weather, and disorientation explain the vast majority of missing hiker reports. Yet a specific subset of these cases directly defies natural models. The physical evidence left behind simply doesn't align with a standard wilderness accident. When a person disappears without a trace under conditions that nature alone cannot replicate, investigators are forced to widen their search and consider deliberate human malice. America's public lands cover tens of millions of acres, and massive portions of that space are almost entirely unpatrolled. It is an ideal environment for hidden criminal activity. Search teams must actively evaluate the possibility of kidnappings, illicit encampments, and unprovoked violence. Out past the tourist centers, anyone looking to cause harm has absolute isolation on their side. The sheer geographical scale creates permanent blind spots. A crime committed miles off a main trail occurs completely out of sight, with zero surveillance cameras and virtually no chance of an accidental witness walking by. Even the standard criminal theory falls short. It fails to explain cases where trained search dogs lose a scent instantly, or where people are eventually discovered in physically impossible locations, like high mountain ledges they couldn't have climbed to on their own. Exhausting both environmental hazards and human criminality leaves a glaring blank spot. When logical investigations fail to produce answers, an investigative void opens up, and extreme speculation rushes in. For decades, the national park system maintained isolated clusters of local data, but entirely failed to track disappearances across a centralized database. Without transparent numbers, an information vacuum formed. Public suspicion rapidly grew into widespread speculation of a government cover-up. Park administrators firmly reject any claims of an orchestrated cover-up. Still, the historical lack of centralized tracking provided fertile ground for fringe ideas to capture the public imagination. In the absence of official facts, many turn to the supernatural. Theories involving undiscovered cryptids, hidden interdimensional portals, and unseen supernatural entities became deeply attached to the narrative. Supporters of these explanations frequently point to the strangest anomalies in the case files. They cite survivors who report periods of unaccounted missing time, and victims whose remains turn up miles away from their last known location, fully clothed and completely unharmed. Not a single piece of verifiable proof has ever confirmed these supernatural claims. They endure precisely because logical investigations have reached a dead end. Missing 411 represents a terrifying mosaic of nature's brutality, human error, and institutional oversight. We rely heavily on modern GPS, satellite phones, and advanced search and rescue technology, but those tools offer a false sense of mastery. The physical wilderness remains entirely indifferent to our presence, and the phenomenon is ongoing. Every single year, hikers continue to walk down paths just like this one, only to vanish into the trees under exactly the same inexplicable circumstances. Behind every cold case file is a permanent trauma. The families, the search teams, and the investigators are left permanently haunted by questions that offer no resolution. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the American wilderness, the next unsolved disappearance is already waiting to happen.